Welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast, the podcast that gives you immediate actions you can take to start seeing life-shifting results now. Hey everybody, welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast. This is Mark Cardone.
And Theron Feidt.
I'm really excited about today's episode. We talk a lot about our brains and mindset and things
Yeah,
like that. And one of the things that I think people forget is that really like our brain's a muscle, right?
right.
Our brain is a muscle, it's a computer, it's so many different things.
Yeah.
And the way we treat it and what we do with it can have a profound impact on the results we achieve, the life we live, and all of those things.
I think anybody listening to this podcast realizes that, that to some degree, the people that are going to look at the title of Achieve Results Now is the name of the podcast. That's a bunch of
Hmm.
hokey stuff, those people are just probably never going to change. They're going to be
Yeah,
the same. They're going to struggle through life. They're going to have, because we all have struggles. That's what life's about, is overcoming your struggles to get stronger. That's why they're there, right? But you see the people that make the same mistakes and are still living paycheck to paycheck and are not healthy, and it's really, all of that is fixable, but it's internal, where they're
yeah,
thinking it's external. They're thinking it's the world is against them, the government, this or that. And not that those things can't play a role, because they certainly do. But the biggest thing is your mind,
yeah.
like
It's
you
it's
said.
fun.
Yeah,
And you think about people who struggle, and you think about your brain as a computer, and you go, okay, well, the computer works, right?
yeah,
But then you think, your computer a lot of times just goes on the fritz on accident. Like
yeah,
it'll blue screen of death, or it'll lock up,
yeah.
or like this morning when we were getting ready to record, it froze, in a
It
very
did freeze.
unflattering photo of me was
A
texted to myself. Um,
Yes, and I have it. If anybody's interested in seeing the photo, I'm going to keep it for a little while.
Total blackmail picture, and I love that. So I think knowing how to prime the pump and how to make, because
Yeah,
the struggles are going to come, right?
yeah,
The only difference I think in the struggles is how many times you run into the same one.
yeah,
And a
yeah.
lot of times that is, your limiting beliefs, your
Right,
mindset. It's very rarely, that the weight's just too heavy. It's that you're just not learning and
right.
adapting to lift the weight, right? So
Yeah,
I really love this idea of fueling your mind for success, and
yeah,
getting your brain ready.
yeah. And I think if you've had this experience where you changed your mind to positive mindset and you prepared properly and you feel good, the outcome is better. It doesn't
Hmm.
mean the outcome is perfect. Doesn't mean it goes your way, what was in your mind, because oftentimes, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, Mark, is you have something in your mind that you want, and you're working towards it, and then all of a sudden it's a little different than what you pictured in your mind. But then you wait a little bit and it's actually better, right? So
Yeah.
just because we're not getting exactly what we pictured or exactly what we think we want,
Hmm.
oftentimes it can be better.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a little bit of patience, but of course it takes preparation too, and that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we talk about mindset all the time, and I think really what that is, and how do you have a positive mindset? You have a positive mindset by doing things that create, a stronger brain, right?
Right.
And we're going to talk about different ways to do that, because I think, immediately people think, oh, I do crossword puzzles or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
those are parts of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yes,
But that's
but
not really what we're talking about.
no, right. Like, yes, we're not going to make you necessarily smarter in this
Yeah.
episode, but we will
Right.
make you wiser and
Yeah.
more able to, kind of tackle the days.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess I would encourage you, if you're running into the same problems in your life that come up. I hate to say it, but it's probably you. You're
Hmm.
you're you're either doing something wrong or you're not doing something you should be doing. Okay, because again, those problems that come in your life, they really are just lessons for you. That's what they are. And of course, there's tragedies that happen. We don't know why they happen. That's not what we're really talking about. I'm talking about the day-to-day things that really trip up, because the big things in life, they can certainly trip you up, but what trips you up more and more often are the daily things.
Yeah.
Somebody cuts you off in traffic and then you're mad and your whole day is ruined because of that. How
Hmm.
silly is that? I'm not saying you don't get mad for, a few minutes. That's fine. But should that affect your whole day and then your day goes down the hill because somebody cut you off and they didn't even know they cut you off? They're not even aware that they cut you off and they're just going about their day and having a great day and they are now living in your mind the whole
I,
day. I mean, that's
I
silly.
I love
Right?
that
Isn't that
example because
silly?
I love that example because anyone, I know we have listeners everywhere, but anyone who is listening from near us
Oh my.
understands
Yeah.
the vast construction and how everyone's learning the zipper merge right now for the first time.
Zipper merge, yes.
And boy, are we experiencing some frustrations.
Yeah.
But like getting into that. So let's talk about some of our three things here. Number one,
Yeah.
because something you said ties into it, but it's about curating what you consume. It's
Yeah.
about standing guard at the door of your mind, right? And we've talked about that before. And you talked about like there's bad things happening in the world all the time. There's also good things happening in the world
Yeah.
all the time. Right. And I think we just need to do a better job at, seeing, and I'm not saying we ignore, the
Right.
negative things
Right.
like your toe falls off, you need to take care of it. Right.
Yeah.
But there's also not, 11, how many? 19 other digits on your hands and feet
Oh,
that you
I
should be
wonder where
grateful
you're
for.
going with that.
I don't
What
know,
number? Why would you
but
say 11?
yeah, I know 11. I don't know how many toes and fingers I have. But curating what you consume, I'll let you take it from there.
Okay. Um,
Cheers.
yeah, so this is important. This was part of our morning routine that we talked about, and it really is should be part of your morning routine. And actually throughout the day, but I think starting your day with something positive. And you have a lot of inputs. Certainly, reading is great. However, I do challenge people that read just books for pleasure all the time. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't, because learning to read and reading well is important. However, if you're just consuming books that are just pleasure reading, it's just slightly better than watching TV because you're not filling your mind with positive things. You're just working on how to read better, right? So what we're talking about is what can you read that's inspirational? What can you read that's going to give you ideas? The best way to succeed in your career is start reading about your career, successful people, whether it's trade magazines or you're reading articles or you're reading their books that they wrote about how they were successful in their career. If you do that, you'll be an expert in less than 10 years
Yeah. No,
by just doing that. Because why? Because the vast majority of people don't do that. They just go to their job and just do their job. They don't try to grow and get better. And I
mhm,
understand if you're a factory worker, that's kind of the mindset, and that's what factory workers are for. So I understand that. However, oftentimes people that do have a chance to move up the ladder or to increase their knowledge don't.
mhm.
And they have that same mindset of just doing their work and that's it.
Yeah, and there's so many things in the world that you can learn, and there's so many, there's books, right? That and what you said, I think that's, I always have a book that I'm reading,
Yeah,
personal development, relationships. Like there's so many areas of our lives too that we can improve on, right? You can
right.
improve your health. Health books are great. Depending on where it is, you gotta make sure you get the right ones. But
Yeah,
reading about health, reading about finances, reading about all your, how to make those big sections of your life better.
right.
We always say garbage in, garbage out,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, if
Hmm.
if we're if we're putting the bad things in, we're gonna get the bad things out. One of the things, we've talked about the news before, and I historically just don't like watching the
Yeah,
news,
yeah.
because I feel like, it leans negative. It makes you feel like the world's falling in. And I think one of the things that's happening, is more and more people are getting their news from social media. You know,
TikTok
right,
specifically.
right, because I mean, the main news networks are on TikTok, so people are scrolling and
Right.
kind of catching the clips of the main news,
Yeah.
but in between all that, there's a lot of garbage,
Yeah.
that you're just kind of flipping in. So, I think really trying to take that, I love the word curate
Yeah.
because it's so important to make sure that you are in control I'm not saying I love social media. I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
bad, but you definitely can't let the algorithm and the things control everything you see. You need to take an active role in searching
Right.
for the things you want if you
Right.
want to have that, better experience in your life.
Right. So this is talking about input, right?
Yeah.
So I mentioned reading, you mentioned watching, and then listening is part of it too. Now, obviously, a video oftentimes are both auditory and visual, but it's really making sure that you're really focused on what that is, what's the input. And there's a lot of great videos on YouTube. Anthony Robbins is on YouTube for free.
Yeah.
He has a lot of content. You want to learn about your mind and learn how to be successful. He's somebody you can listen to for free. You know, the knowledge now is so vast that it can be very overwhelming. And I think what you mentioned is the algorithm. You have to be very careful what it's feeding you because it is controlling you. You know,
Hmm.
and it controls us. It controls you, controls me. So we have to make sure that we're getting off of those social media sometimes and reading real books
Yeah.
and watching real videos and not just what the YouTube algorithm feeds us,
Hmm.
but also we're searching out knowledge. Even go to the library, is good to do. But it's yeah, I know, right?
The library. Oh my
What is
goodness.
that?
And
But they have audiobooks and things that you can check out of the library if you don't want to buy them, so there's a lot of information out there for
I
sure.
have a book from the library right now sitting by
Yeah.
my nightstand. And it's funny you talk about listening. The people who are like listening to this right now already know this one because they are actively listening to this
Right.
podcast, right? Which is
Yes.
feeding their mind. And if you know someone who doesn't listen to good stuff, send them this podcast as a
Yeah,
reminder.
for sure.
Um, so getting into number two, right? 'Cause number two, I think, is really important. It's something people don't think about, and we're talking about environment. And
Yeah.
it's funny this comes up because I was listening to another podcast yesterday, actually the Amy Porterfield podcast, and they were talking about how um we are habitual creatures, right?
Yeah.
Like as people, so much of what we do is just out of habit, reaching for our phone first thing in the morning, the things we eat, the schedule we keep, everything is so
Right.
habitual, and so much of that is based on the environment, right? The patterns we
Hmm.
live are really because of the environment we live
Right.
in.
Right. Right.
So I want to talk about that a little bit, how we can surround ourselves with excellence.
Yeah. So if you're a parent, and I'm speaking about a good parent, you're gonna pay attention to what kids are around your kids, and you're going to be mindful of that. Now, yeah, obviously you have to be careful not to be too controlling, but you want to set your kids up for success
Yeah,
by surrounding them with kids that are like-minded, that are going somewhere because we both have kids. My kids are grown, your kids are getting there. And so, I mean, one of the goals is to raise kids that are going to contribute to society, that aren't going to be a drain on society. Um, and in order to do that, you got to get them in activities and around people that
yeah,
that are going to support, not only support them, but also get them to grow and challenge them in a good way, Um, and so if we do that with our kids, but we forget to do that with ourselves, that's kind of silly.
yeah,
Who are we around on a weekly basis? That's what you want to be thinking of. Who are we around? Now, oftentimes we're around our family, which can be very, very good. And certainly your immediate family hopefully is great because you're part of it. But
hmm,
then you have your extended family. And I think we all have extended family that we can love them, but we can also love them from a distance if they're not good for us.
hmm,
We can see them a couple times a year at different things, so it's okay to limit certain family members that maybe not is good for you, that don't bring out the best in you.
yeah,
Again, that doesn't mean you take them out of your life because they are family, unless they did something horribly bad. But it is important that we're watching and paying attention to who we're around a lot.
yeah. And I mean, this is not a sponsor, right? But this is what I love about the dojo. right?
Yeah.
This is like this,
Yeah.
and this is what a lot of people love about the dojo, is it's a, and somebody said this to me in class literally last night, like their daughter wanted to take a break, but then she came back for class and was like, I'm just so happy here.
Yeah.
Everybody's so
Yeah.
positive,
Yep.
everybody's encouraging me, right?
Right.
And like, I mean, I will say to everybody on the podcast, martial arts is a fantastic environment. If you find the right dojo and things like that, it's a great place to have kids be raised, and spend your time because you're around other positive people. And there's other
Right.
places to do that,
Yeah.
but find those places, find
Hmm.
those communities and those groups where people are supportive, positive, striving for something better, happy where they, happy people. And if you surround yourself, right? I mean, if you're around three happy people, you'll be the fourth happy person.
Right.
Um, so I think, that's why one of the things I love about dojo is, it's more the people. Like, yes, it's great
Right.
self-defense.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
Yeah. For
great
sure.
fitness. Yes, it's all those things.
Yep.
But the family community you get is good. And I think people should really go out of their way to find those environments of people.
Right. Because my kids did both. Even though my daughter wasn't involved and didn't do martial arts, she was at the dojo all the time when she was younger. My son got all the way up to his second degree, and both my kids did other sports too. Several other sports, and they did travel, and so we were deep into that as well. And I have to say that we had some really good coaches,
Mhm.
and we also had some really bad coaches. And I would say probably 25% were really good, but the 75% was not. And
Yeah,
I think that's probably the norm,
yeah,
and I think we have to really pay attention to that. Yeah, we want to keep our kids busy, but what's the environment that we're going to do to keep them busy, in
yeah,
those other activities? Are they positive? Are they going to uplift them? Are they going to be supportive? And if the answer is no, then you have to find something else. And
yeah,
that goes along with us too.
yeah,
We have to make sure that we're watching what we're doing and where we're hanging around. And, are we hanging at the bar? Probably not the best if you're hanging at the bar 3 or 4 days a week. It's probably not going to produce the results that you're looking for. Just saying,
100%. And,
you
well,
know.
to go off of that, what you just said, I think another part of this that I just want to touch on real quick, and something James Clear talks about in The Power of Habit, is your physical environment, right? Because
Yeah.
I think your people environment is a
Yeah.
huge priority to fix, but I also think the physical environment you're in plays a big role in the patterns that you live, right?
Right.
And if you're waking up every day, and your office is just cluttered and you don't want to
Right.
deal with it, and if you're going to your refrigerator and the first things you see are chocolate cake
Hmm.
and things like that, I think those things are worth thinking about. Just like like talking about kids again, if you walk in your kids' rooms, and there's clothes all over the floor, and that's where all their
Right.
books are underneath the
Yeah.
clothes,
Yeah.
they're obviously not going to be inspired to pick up the
Right.
book and read.
Right.
You, changing your environment, and sometimes listen, I know a lot of people who say it's just more than I can deal with. I can't clean off my desk. It's
Yeah.
just a big project,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they continue to delay that and put it off.
Right.
So what they'll do is they'll just find a park bench someplace.
Yeah.
They'll go to the library. They'll go to a
Yeah.
coffee shop, someplace that's a different environment, and they'll work there,
Hmm.
or they'll think there,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
uh, just to get that fresh feel.
Right. And that's fine. That's fine. I think we need to search that out. But the
Yeah.
big thing is taking action and thinking future,
Yes.
and asking yourself, are these people or is this environment, whatever the case is this going to lead me to the best results?
Yep.
That simple question, if it's a yes or no. If
Yeah.
it's a maybe, it's a no.
Right.
Right? It's either a definite yes, this environment, these people, they're good, they're going to help me. Well, they're kind of negative, and but they're all right. That's a no. It's
Hmm.
not, no, they're not all right. They're a no. So that's really, it's more of a black and white when it comes to that part.
Yep. 100%. All right. Let's talk about FUD.
Yes. Right. So this is something we all have, and we all have certain degrees of it. It's not either you have it or you don't have it necessarily. And I'm
Hmm.
I'm sure there's some people that don't have this at all, but most people do. So FUD
Yeah.
stands, I think most people have heard of this before: fears, uncertainties, and doubts. And
Hmm.
we all have one of those three or all three at certain times in our life. And when do they come up? Well, they come up when things are new, when things are different than things you haven't done before, but also sometimes they come up with things you haven't improved on. Let's say public speaking, for instance, something that you want to do to improve. Every time you try to speak in public, the FUDs come out.
Hmm.
Well, that means you need to figure out you need to change your training in order to get to overcome those things. And it starts in your brain.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think we've talked a lot about the external stuff, and this is really the step. This
Yeah.
third step is where we talk about the internal stuff, right?
Hmm.
And the exercise of making our brain work for us
Right.
instead of negative self-talking us into the ground, right?
Right.
And like you said, fear, uncertainty, doubt, we all have it at times, right?
Yeah.
In different areas. I public speak, two times, three times a month to decent sized groups, and every time, and I've in 10 years, every time there's a little bit of fear, a
Yeah.
little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of, it's all there, right?
Yeah.
But one of the best skills you can develop for your mind is how to work through it, right? I
Yeah.
think that's important, how to work through it,
Right.
and then just how to like continually build your confidence to mitigate that away. Like
Right.
the first time I public spoke, I remember being terrified, like voice tremoring. First time we
Yeah.
did this podcast, voices
Oh
kind of,
yeah.
and this is like not even live, right?
Right.
um but then you eventually build that confidence
Hmm.
and prove that you can do it, and that negative self-talk fades out.
Right. I like taking each step. And so, fear, for instance, I like what you said. This was many podcasts ago, several years ago. We talked about fear, and I think you brought it down to: is it going to kill you, or are you going to get arrested? If the answer is no to both of those, then don't be afraid.
Right.
Didn't you say
Everything.
something like that? I
I
may
did.
be
I,
paraphrasing, but
no, I did. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's such a great thing. It simplifies it right down to the fact that it's not talking about fear of embarrassment or fear of failure or fear of anything. It's simply do it unless you potentially could die or you're going to get arrested by doing it. I think that's such a simplistic but great thing to work on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So the uncertainty is, I think the way that I've overcome uncertainty is preparation. So
Yeah.
preparing myself. So if I know that I did the work, let's say I'm going to do a talk, I'm going to do a speech, whatever the case is, I'm going to teach a class that I haven't taught in a while. If I prepared for it, then my uncertainty is little to none. If I didn't prepare for it, my uncertainty is higher. So, okay, that's my own fault. I didn't prepare.
Hmm.
And then the doubt really is internal of, do I believe in myself? Right? Do I truly believe in myself? Am I doing this for the right reasons? And do I believe I can accomplish it? And how do you do that? Through successes. You continually work on and build up continual successes over and over again. So I did this one thing and I won, or I improved, or I did it better. That's a success. And then I do it again, and then success builds on success.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it is I think something you said kind of inside there is looking at those wins,
Yeah,
and saying, because you can you can stand up in front of a group of people and talk, right? And do just okay, like feel like you just did okay.
yeah,
But looking back, thinking about how you overcame the fear of doing it at all,
right,
right?
right.
That builds a little bit of confidence, and I think, some of us have that expectation that like, oh, we're going to do this thing and it's just going to go 200% awesome, right?
Yeah,
And so often in life, it just doesn't work that way. Your first cold call is never your best cold call, right?
right,
But nobody yells at you, nobody, so it gets a little bit easier as you march along if
yeah,
you're focused on your progress, right? And I
right,
think that helps a lot with the doubt aspect.
yeah, for sure. All right, I think we're ready to summarize. Fueling
Do
your
it.
mind for success.
All right. So number one, curate what you consume. Garbage in, garbage out. You can't grow a banana if you plant an apple seed.
Hmm.
So right, I don't think. So make sure you are planting the right things in your brain.
Number two, surround yourself with excellence. And that means people, but it also means your environment. The places that you work or you play or whatever is making sure it's setting yourself up for success by who's around you.
All right, let's talk about FUD. Fear,
Yes.
uncertainty, and doubt. This is about doing the internal work to build stronger subconscious, a stronger mindset, and really to get that brain working for you and not talking you down. And that wraps up this episode of the Achieve Results Now podcast. Give it a share. The best thing you can do, give it a share with somebody. Shoot that text with a link to the episode to one of your friends. And we will see you on the next episode. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Hop over to our website at www.achieveresultsnow.com to get your free copy of our book, Ignite Results, 4 specific daily actions to help you achieve results now. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Achieve Results Now. Thanks for listening, commenting, and subscribing. Now get out there and achieve results now.